Okay. Hello. Hi, Dr.
Hello.
Zeina. How
Hello, Sandra.
are you?
I'm fine. How are you? We meet again.
Yes, it's a pleasure, always a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for giving us the time. Thank you لأنه it's a very interesting subject. يعني إن كان the subject we have tonight, we have a lot of audience waiting to hear from you. What makes us
Wonderful.
what makes us good leaders or you know impactful leaders وخصوصي انه leadership اليوم is taking it's changing, it's transforming, and especially during these times where there's more and more pressure on leaders to actually lead properly and to change, to transform the workforce. So tonight we have from our audience people who are leading already in leadership position, وحتى we have people who are not in leadership position, but they would like to understand what makes a good leader in case they are one day in a leadership position, or يعني to assess and to really look at the leaders that are responsible for their well-being and their productivity and their roles in the company. So هيدا التوبيك عم نشوف كتير تغييرات فيه، وعم نشوف a lot of importance أكتر وأكتر على emotional intelligence. يمكن in past times كان importance أكتر على technical skills. هلا عم نشوف shift شوي يعني حابين نسمع منك what you are seeing. We know that you work with a lot of executives, you coach a lot of executives. So كمان يعني we want to hear from you other than أكيد the concepts and how to become more emotionally aware leaders. حابين نسمع منك كمان what are the struggles and the challenges that leaders face today during this transformation يلي بيعملوها, and can we really become better leaders and يعني على إنه in a short time ولا it will take a long time. عنا كتير أسئلة إليك and we'd like to know كمان يعني going back to your experience especially with leaders in the region. So a big thank you for your presence tonight. قبل ما تعرفينا عن حالك لأنه we have new joiners يمكن ما بيعرفوك. أنا I just want to remind our audience إنه they can interact with us. نحن رح نقضي معك ساعة ونص من الوقت, تقريبا 45 minutes. It's a lecture where you will يعني will explain the concepts, so people can interact with us through questions and answers, and they can ask anonymously. So please وقت بتطرحوا سؤالكم عندكم the option to ask anonymously لأنه هلأ we are recording, and so that your name and your identity doesn't show up in the recording, you have the option to ask anonymously. ومن بعدها رح ننقل معك دكتور على a virtual room. كمان رح نقول للاتنديز كيف ينقلوا معنا, where we can interact معك. It's a safe space, ما بنكون عم نسجل. We can interact معك أكتر, talk about cases, talk about real life experience where you can guide us and coach us into يعني looking at our struggles. So a big thank you for having you tonight. كمان نحب نذكر إنه you have a team of coaches who are present with us on the Sira platform every Wednesday in case our attendees also would like to get coached or to عن جد يكون عندهم هالسبورت بحياتهم العملية in their career life. Your team is very capable and they are present كل أربعة to offer this support. Thank you so much. عارفين عن حالك and we can start our conversation.
First of all, I want to thank you, Sandra, for this. This is my second time giving this presentation, not this presentation specifically, but being on the Sira platform. I'm going to first ask you to allow me to speak in English because I do have a very big audience in the United States. Since I am living between countries, I live between the United States, actually Texas, Houston, and Lebanon. I do have a lot of work in the US, and I do have a lot of work in the GCC area. So if that would be a possibility, I would, because I would like to put this on my platform so that they would benefit also. Is that okay?
Of course.
Okay. The second thing is a brief introduction about me is that I deal with wellness and leadership. And that's briefly who I am. I come from a background of dietetics, but I've became a coach a very long time ago, since 2005, and a masterful coach with the International Coach Federation. And also I hold another PhD in counseling and human behavior. So I'm all about the human being, body, mind, and soul. Along the path, I certified myself in emotional intelligence because I found out that this is a very important area that actually affects our well-being. And now when I go through the PowerPoint, you will see how it affects leadership specifically, and how it affects you as a human being and your wellness. So that is briefly what I do. I do a lot of trainings. I have 2 coaching schools that I am co-founder in, a lot of leadership projects that I work in, a lot of wellness projects that I work in. I'm a university professor, and most importantly, I'm a wellness person. So I am glad I'm here in this platform, and I hope I will service you in this session and you will benefit. Please ask questions as we go along. Just put them in the chat box and Sandra will let me know. And let's go ahead. So let's start with what is emotional intelligence and the definition of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence requires reasoning about emotions and about understanding how they enhance your thinking. This impacts intuition and it impacts integrity, both of yourself and of others. Also, it includes communication, relationship skills, perception and recognition of emotions. And a person with a high EQ helps you monitor your emotions using them so that you can enhance emotional and intellectual growth. Very simply put, emotional intelligence is how you understand yourself and how you understand others, how you manage yourself and how you manage others. So what's the difference between emotional intelligence and effective leadership? So now most of you have heard of IQ, which is the intelligence quotient. It's a number that is basically thought to express the relative intelligence of a person. But have you ever met people with high IQs that cannot talk to other people, or they seem arrogant, or they are that they can irritate people around them, or they're basically not people's people? So they are not, you feel like they don't know how to communicate. So IQ is basically looking at how intelligent you are from the cognition standpoint. Emotional intelligence, also known as the EQ, which is the emotional quotient. And in it, we identify, assess, and we manage your own emotions and those of others. Having a higher EQ means that you recognize and understand emotions and use that information to guide your thinking and your actions. Now, we all know that emotions are very contagious. Intense people can spread those emotions to others, which is why it is so vital for leaders to manage and control their emotions. When we have EQ experts like Daniel Goleman, they found out that top 10 to 15% of our leaders who stood out as exceptional were those with a higher emotional intelligence. So this success was due to their just as much to their social abilities, such as networking and collaboration skills, as much as their intelligence. So it is really very important. As you can see here, the IQ is only a reflection of someone's relative intelligence, and EQ allows you to assess and manage your emotions. For effective leadership to happen, it is about the capacity to reason valid information. Let's talk some more. There is a theory of multiple intelligences. There are different types of intelligences. As we know, the naturalist intelligence, which is nature smart, musical intelligence, which is music smart, logical mathematical intelligence, which is number smart, existential intelligence, spatial intelligence, which is picture smart, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, which is basically body smart, linguistic intelligence, which is word smart, and so on and so forth. What we're interested in is intrapersonal intelligence, in emotional intelligence, which is self-smart, and interpersonal intelligence, which is people smart. So the intra and interpersonal intelligences are the most closely related to emotional intelligence and social functioning. Business leaders since the 90s are no longer being defined by their IQs or even their technical skills. It is their emotional intelligence that makes the difference. It is rarely the lack of smart or vision. And most unsuccessful leaders, they stumble because of one simple fatal shortcoming. The failure is one of the emotional strengths. There are many examples to give, but we can talk about one that is very famous, which is the Bill Clinton issue with Monica Lewinsky. That is lack of emotional intelligence. We can talk about Zeina, basically what happened to him, and when he did the butt head, basically that was a hijack. So it's basically that is very important to know when to be able to control your emotions. Okay. Take a look at this. What are the benefits of emotional intelligence? The ability to express yourself clearly, the ability to control your emotions, to avoid skewed thinking, to obtain commitment to others, to increase your well-being, to overcome difficult situations, to build better basically relationships, to communicate with mutually with respect with other people, and you say the right thing at the right time, to build resilience. In fact, your emotions and your social skills are as important to your business success as facts, figures, and processes. And you need to be cognitively able to handle the complexity of a given role or a job. But after reaching the threshold of knowing enough, then intellect makes so little difference. And the research has shown that when people have basically equivalent education and technical competencies, it is the EQ that accounts for their job success in every field. So there is such a robust connection between emotional intelligence and success of your job because of a very high, strong EQ. And it is very well known. If you put the term emotional intelligence and business on Google or Google Scholar, you will have more than 90,000 papers on the subject. So with EQ, you can manage your emotions to obtain the results you need. And you need this you do this, sorry, because by appealing to both reason and emotions, instead of trying to convince someone by facts alone. Any questions so far?
Dr. A, we have a question. How much are you seeing a shift in the HR departments or within companies for promoting people with a criteria for promotion is EQ testing and really grading somebody on his EQ performance? What I have seen, I have also been in corporate for 20 years, and what I have seen is we tend mostly to promote people based on their competencies and on their skills. And then when they are in leadership position, we start to ask of them to be more EQ, to have EQ developed. But along the promotional path, we don't give EQ a lot of importance. Is this still the case?
It is actually, unfortunately, still the case. Now, depending on where we are talking, geographically also is a very important parameter, because across the GCC area, it still is the case. In Fortune 500 companies in the US and across Europe, at the C-suite level, this is not the case, but still at the C-suite level. Now, and there is a big issue here because of using assessments also for promotions is a very big ethical issue. So it depends on the company, its policies, and what they are and what they stand for. So this is a very delicate matter.
What do you mean using assessment as a big ethical
assessments
issue?
Like emotional intelligence, like personality type testing, like any form of assessment for promotion, other than the 360s that they do on a regular basis. There are many assessment tools that we use as coaches and in-house or as outsourced coaches. So it depends on the company's policy. And even for recruitment issues, it's an ethical issue still with emotional intelligence per se and leadership. So that is a delicate issue, and it is very specific for every company. Did this answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. I love this. Before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others. And I have a question here. Do you think leaders are born or made?
We'll ask it as a poll to our attendees. It's a very interesting question. لأنه it's also it also creates a kind of in companies there's always this question, are some people naturally born to lead and leaders, or can this be cultivated? Okay, while waiting for people to answer, maybe we can.
Maybe what?
No, Anna, I've put the poll, so we're waiting for people to answer our poll. So we've asked whether they are born to lead, whether they cultivated, or whether it's both.
Yes. So waiting for them to answer, I will define leadership, first of all. And It's an act. It's an act of leading others or an organization. Yes?
So لهلا we have 30% work on it. The remaining 70% are both. Zero
Yes.
born to lead.
Good. We have a great audience. So it is actually both. It is actually both. You need certain emotional intelligence skills for leadership. And this is actually the parameter that defines a leader. When you have a highly emotionally intelligent person, it's one of the great parameters that helps in leadership. So leadership is having a clear vision. It's having the ability to effectively communicate that vision to others, and to have the ability to have the knowledge, the information, and ways or methods to realize that vision. It's making sure that set goals are achieved, and to set standards, and being able to manage conflicts and resolve problems and overcome obstacles. And then the definition of a great leader becomes one who is able to perform these acts of leadership. But who better than a person that has a high emotional intelligence to do so? So let me tell you or give you a model that I work on and I'm certified on. So there are many ways to assess emotional intelligence, many ways. And there are ways that have started in the late 70s by Reuven Baron, and then Daniel Goleman in the 90s published a book that became a success overnight. And actually, Peter Salovey and Reuven Baron are the people that actually worked on the emotional intelligence in the 70s on their dissertations. And after that, so many assessments came by, and this is one assessment tool that is used from a research perspective. It's via the MHS, the multi-health systems, and we use it a lot in research. We use it personally, we use it with leaders, we use it with physicians, we use it in studies. So it's really a versatile tool that we use and helps us in assessing a person's emotional intelligence. And in it, you go through a test that is 133 questions, and then you get a score. And with that score, we sit down with our coachee and we start discussing their scores. The validity and reliability of this test is very high. In it, we look at 5 composites. The first composite, as you can see here, is the self-perception composite. And in it, we look at how we look inwards. So we look at our self-regard. And self-regard is how self-confident are we. In the self-perception composite, also, we have the self-actualization. And self-actualization is how much do we want to actualize ourselves in life, and how much purpose are we living at the moment and we want to go forward with in our goals. And the third part of the self-perception composite is the emotional self-awareness. And in emotional self-awareness, we're talking about how aware are we when we are angry, how aware are we when we are upset, or when we are numb, or when we are sad, or when we are depressed, or do we really know ourselves or not? The second composite is the self-expression. And in it, we have also the 3 subscales. The first subscale is emotional expression. Do we have the ability to tell people in front of us what we're actually feeling? If we're angry, if we're sad, if we are irritated, if something is bothering us, if we're happy, and if we're grateful, do we have that ability? How assertive we are assertive, not aggressive? Do we have the ability to get our point across without creating conflicts? And how independent emotionally are we from others? Can we stand on our own, or there are codependency issues? In the interpersonal part, we have 3 subscales. The first one is interpersonal relationships and how are we in communication. The second part is how empathetic we are. How are we able to put ourselves in other people's shoes and what they are going through? And the third is social responsibility and in the community that we are in. How socially responsible we are. We're not talking about only a country, we're talking also about the organization we are in, or even a family. And the fourth composite is how do we take our decisions? And in it is also 3 subscales. The first subscale is how do we problem solve? Especially when we are emotional. This is the difference between this and other tests. The second is how are we in reality looking at things, reality testing. Are we objective or subjective when we are taking our decisions? And the third, which is a very important parameter, is impulse control. How much can we control our impulses when we are in a state that is very emotional? The fifth composite is stress management. And this is why I told you at the beginning, as a well-being person and a wellness person, I wanted to go into this. It's because of all of what you are seeing here. In stress management, we are looking at flexibility. And in flexibility here, we mean the ability to adapt to change. And the second subscale is how much do we take stress? How much are we able to undertake stress, the ability for stress tolerance? And the third subscale is optimism. And how optimistic are we, or how pessimistic are we? And of course, there is a genetic parameter in the optimism factor or subscale. But even though there is a genetic factor, we can still work as coaches on that. I know that is a lot to take in, so I'm gonna take a minute and stop here and see if you have questions.
Yes, Dr. Zeina, we have questions. So first question is, someone from the audience is asking, can there really be transformation? And can we be a different leader at different times in our corporate journey? Maybe at times be a leader that has more skills, as a plus, and then at other times have more maybe communication being a strong point, then at other times having maybe empathy being a strong point. Do you see this in a typical leadership journey? That's the first question.
I see it more and more and more each day. And I've seen a progress of that more and more after 2010, 2011. The shift is real and the change is real. But the key, really the key, is the self-awareness piece. Whenever you are self-aware of where you are, that is 50% of the solution. But then comes the action part of what you're going to do with it. Because working on one's weaknesses, on one's self, or we cannot come and tell somebody in a leadership position as like I will be working with a CEO and tell them, you have an impulse control of a dog because you have no patience at all. And, your scores are very low. You're scoring in 30s or 40s, and that is low. You know how many times I get a rejection and I will get this report thrown in my face? Like, this is not right. And these are people that have been hired they are forced actually to be coached because they are problematic. And so I will run an emotional intelligence test, and you will see that they don't acknowledge that. But once they really acknowledge and are aware and they start to work, change happens. So yes, my answer is yes, yes, and then yes.
All right, so change is possible, and yes, we can work on these areas. يعني you've seen the upbringing of mostly, if we're talking about the Middle East region, in our upbringing, we are not trained يعني حتى until the workforce, other than a development within the company. And a few of us are lucky to have this development. A lot of us are not, we don't obtain any kind of development within companies or while growing up. And all these areas, and being self-aware, expressing emotions, dealing with stress in a positive way, in a healthy way, impulse control, these are things that as a region, we are not trained, or we are not educated in that sense. لأنه بالcurriculum, in our curriculum in school, we don't have these elements. So do you see that gap here in the region more than in other places in the upbringing? That's the first question. And second, if today we are as part of the workforce, how can we start, even if we are not in leadership positions, how can we start to cultivate these areas?
Okay. The first part of the question, my answer is yes. There is a difference, because I do work globally and I can see a difference. But there's a big but. With globalization and opening between countries, this gap is becoming less and less with time. Even if the upbringing is at a different level and the schooling system is different. What's happening is when we have for example, now our Gen Z is going into the workforce, immediately companies are starting up with training. So there is training and education at the baseline in everywhere. We're talking GCC area, we're talking Europe, we're talking North America. So that is creating a very big shift, because people are working from all over the world from their homes now. And there is something that is changing. So this is showing a very big shift. Do we need to start self-development at the schooling level? Absolutely. And are we working on it? Yes. It's still in its very, very early stages in the GCC area, and in a medium place in North America and Europe. So it's still not even there in the schools, but we are getting there. So the second part of your question, what was it? I forgot.
Can we start working on these areas even if we are not in leadership positions, and where can we start?
Yes, definitely we can, with a coach. You don't have to be in a leadership position to work on these areas. You have to create self-awareness. Our jobs as coaches is igniting a human being to reach their full potential, be it at work, be it at home, be it with themselves, and living the lives that they want to live. And this is, number one, by self-awareness. Number two, by actionizing whatever they need to do. So absolutely, yes.
Okay. Coach, we in a part of self-development كمان, maybe some resources that the person can read, and maybe we can give a list at the end or with a follow-up.
I disagree. I will tell you why. Not because I'm a coach. I have done so many trainings in life, and I have given thousands of trainings, and I still do. Change doesn't happen only with training. Change happens when you continue the work. until you anchor the shifts. So if you can tell me training, educating, and coaching, I agree. And one of the major things that I don't accept doing anymore is giving a training to a company or to any organization without coaching, because you are not going to be able to create any shift. And if you are going to create a shift, it's going to be to less than 5% of the population. And it's because people take the information and they don't use it. So it's very important that coaching does happen, or follow up at least on, or group coaching on whatever we need to do. Does this answer you? Okay. So based on the 133 items on the inline inventory that you will do, there are several types of reports that you can come up with. But for the purpose of this webinar, I have chosen the leadership report. So you will be able to see how does leadership tune into emotional intelligence. And you will basically have scientifically validated, reliable measure of self-perceived emotional intelligence, and you will have overall results, and you will include something what we call the leadership potential and the derailers of your leadership and the impact at work and strategies for action for each subscale. So this is how an overview of how the report looks like, and you can see in it that how the composites are put and how they are distributed, where you will see, you will have a look at total emotional intelligence, and it provides composite scores, and it also provides a score for each subscale. And this is the leadership page. In it, in this assessment tool specifically, you have 4 leadership potentials that we look at, and we have the authenticity. We have the leader, how much he is scoring in his coaching abilities. And we have how much does the leader have insight, and how much does the leader have innovation. And as you can see, the emotional intelligence subscales are located in each of these leadership potentials. And there's also where the leader is being derailed, and what can we help him with. I'm going to talk a bit about applying emotional intelligence to self-leadership in the Marshmallow Study. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Marshmallow Study, but it is a study that has been done in Stanford for preschoolers. These 4-year-olds were each given a marshmallow, and they were told, you can have this marshmallow now if you want, but if you don't eat it until after I go and run an errand and come back, you can have 2 when I return. Of course, some of the students ate it immediately, and others did their best by creating activities and keeping themselves occupied not to eat it. And then 14 years later, as part of this longitudinal study, now the 18-year-olds were evaluated. The ones that we call the grabbers were very young adults and were evaluated. They had tendencies to fall apart more easily and succumb to stress and to pick fights with people and have less temptation resistance when following their goals. Those who waited had 210 points higher scores on their SATs. They went into their 20s. They were more intellectually skilled and had more attention abilities. They were better able to focus, concentrate, and develop close relationships. They were more dependable, more self-control, and they had more responsible when frustrated. What does this mean? Is emotional intelligence innate or not? It doesn't mean that. It means that there is a genetic factor and there is an environmental factor. The genetic factor is up to 20%, and the environmental factor is up to 80% or more. Another example of the world's largest cargo airline with over 290,000 employees, the FedEx. They delivered 7 million packages a day with 600 flights a day. And the founder and the CEO believes in evolving leadership, that leaders serve from the front. The leaders get out in front and stay there by raising the standards by which they judge themselves and by which they are willing to be judged. Implemented the EQ and the self-leadership model to be able to work as a clock as it should be. In the FedEx example, we look at the model of know yourself, choose yourself, give yourself. And this is what I was talking earlier about, the self-awareness component of your emotions and reactions, to shift your unconscious reaction to intentional response, and to give yourself to align the moment-to-moment decisions with a larger sense of purpose. Questions?
None for now.
Okay. Going to the 4 domains of EQ. So these are the 4 domains of emotional quotient. There are several theories and conceptualizations of emotional intelligence. And Daniel Goleman is, as I said, the author and the psychologist who did much of the influential power on EQ in the 90s. And the 4 domains are covered here roughly based on his 4 categories. So Goleman believes that outstanding leadership requires a combination of self-mastery and social intelligence, which have 2 competency areas, which are perception and skills. Effective leaders should generally exhibit at least 1 or more competencies from each domain. The more of these competencies you possess, the higher usually your EQ is going to be. Now, different researchers and thinkers include different competencies under the various domains. But in each of these skills, one of the competencies is usually considered the most fundamental, acting as the foundation for the other. So let's take a look about self-perception. Self-perception is reading yourself or having self-confidence. It's what I showed you before in the assessment as self-regard. The self-management is controlling those emotions, demonstrating integrity, accomplishing and sustaining optimism. The social perception is empathizing with others, reading the big picture and looking at the big picture and having self-confidence. And in the social skills, facilitating, influencing, developing others, cultivating relationships, and collaborating. So these are the 4 domains.
It's a very interesting way of picture. Yani, it creates the structure in our head that it's related to the self and knowing ours. Yani, how do we perceive it and how do we action it? and our relationships, how do we perceive them and how do we action them, or how do we take care of them? So it's an interesting way to memorize the concept of EQ.
And one of the simplest ways of defining emotional intelligence is through that, and I said it at the beginning of this presentation, which is understanding yourself and managing yourself, understanding others and managing others. This is what emotional intelligence is. And when you're able to do that, you will be on top of your game, and you're gonna be feeling well, and you're feeling not at unease all the time. Now, what are some techniques that are needed to improve perception competencies? Would be, have you ever went to work and found an upset, angry, or a worried person or employer or employee? And did you know what to do or to say? Perceptive leaders usually can tune in to what employees feel, and they help them regain self-control when they have personal problems and they're coming into the workplace. And every one of us wants to be that kind of perceptive leader. And let's check some techniques. Okay, let's talk about some characteristics of poor self-awareness. When you project emotions, and what is projection of emotions? It is a defense mechanism. It's unacceptable thoughts or feelings that are represented and they are attributed to someone else. Like when someone is in denial about their own anger, feels that he encounters a lot of angry people. This is projection. Associating emotions. Associating emotions with memories or other unpleasant emotions can usually occur if someone's behavior subconsciously reminds you of something else. For example, a coworker's tone of voice may trigger a childhood memory of a parental punishment. هالقد. Believing you should feel a different way. This means that believing that you should feel a different way than you do can trigger difficult emotions. Sometimes people think they're bad, or feeling emotions, they've been brought up to believe that they are wrong. Okay? This needs to be worked up. Refusing to acknowledge feelings or denying them, what happens when certain feelings are thought to be unacceptable or simply not acknowledged. For example, a CEO in a family business may refuse to acknowledge that the firm's financial troubles are due to his son's inability to control the budget. Blaming others about your feelings can occur when you don't take responsibility for your own emotions and actions. For example, if someone might make an excuse for a project's failure by blaming the economy and not accepting the impact of their own decisions. Now, how do we improve that? How do we improve this ability to read ourselves? First of all, ask for feedback. And usually in companies, we have 360-degree feedback, and that makes use of this idea. Customers, peers, subordinates, supervisors can all provide valuable feedback. And getting really multiple views will give you a more complete picture. For example, you could do regular lessons learned post-mortems on every project and solicit feedback from all the project stakeholders. and be sure to listen without getting defensive. And that is the key. Now, if we don't have high emotional intelligence, we do not have the ability to take feedback without being defensive. And that is basically what is a problem. And then we don't take the feedback, and then we don't improve, and then things happen. Second thing to read yourself is identify your strengths and weaknesses and triggers. Only when you have the ability to know that I have limitations, and I have strengths, and I have weaknesses, I will be able to really have a good look at myself. And a personal balance sheet can help you. It's like an inventory of your talents and your passions, and then you can examine your strengths and triggers, which are situations, and or it could be personalities that provoke an intense emotional response that you have. For example, if micromanagement causes anger, you should investigate why it's causing me anger. And once you identify those triggers, you can stop responding emotionally and start to respond with more rationality. Also, how to interpret goals and feelings. It's not enough just to identify your emotions. You must also interpret them, and you have to interpret your goals. For instance, you could visualize where you will be in 10 years and interpret this by determining what it says about what's important to you. When you experience emotions, ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? For example, if an HR manager faced with a big hiring challenge, worried about it for months beforehand, after he interpreted the worry as fear for his own job, he was able to eliminate the probability of his fears coming true. And he started to focus on others. Self-observe. Who self-observes? No one, because we say we don't have time. Self-observation is enhanced by visualizing yourself if you are observing someone else. And self-curiosity, it will allow you to tune into yourself and identify even your very subtle moods. For example, I have a supervisor that observes herself and learns that she always reacts poorly to people, and she perceives that they are arrogant. She can then look at it after we were working with her, and she designed a plan to improve the area that she was being emotionally hijacked each time she had to deal with this type of person. Record your reactions and thoughts. When you do, you will be able to have an emotional journal and see, it gives you a kind of detachment. And just a few minutes a day, it will help you understand patterns that make you incompatible with certain people or certain jobs, or make you look at yourself if you're a people pleaser or not. So it just shows you a bit who you are. How much time do I still have?
We're running a bit short on time, and we want to also open the floor for questions.
Okay, I will just go. Yes, I'm gonna see if I need to continue, because what is really important, because I gave the main ideas. I love this. Improving your empathy. Listen. Listen. People don't listen. Stand in their shoes. People think that they listen, but they don't listen. When you actively listen, you actually reflect back to the person what you have heard, not continue on talking about something else. Stand in their shoes and find common grounds. Empathy is big for a leader. Sharing with other leaders and sharing with your employee. And they're here as another example of Jack. We're good to go. I gave you what you need to do if they have questions. So I can rant all day long. So
if you want, before we move to the room, if you want to just end with, out of your experience, what are really, what is the most, today, if we want to start, we've listened to your lecture and we want to start working on ourselves, what is the first step that you advise us to do in order to start this journey of being more emotionally intelligent? What would you advise us to do? A couple of things to retain or key takeaways that we can take home.
I gave them actually to you, is about journaling about your emotions and on a daily basis, and then soliciting advice from people you trust that are in the business with you, or a coach. Being soft and compassionate with yourself and understanding really who you are, and giving yourself permission to have weaknesses. So when you start jotting those strengths and weaknesses and emotions and learning about who you are on your first path to learning about emotional intelligence. Another way is, a quicker way, is to actually do the assessment and see where you are right now in time. We say that once we do the test, within 6 months, if you are being coached, there will be at least 30% shift in your EI. It is very important, as David Caruso says, that emotional intelligence is not the opposite of intelligence. It is not the triumph of the heart over the head. It is the unique intersection of both. And I also have some resources here for those people who are interested. I love these books. They are intense books, but they are really, for those leaders, I would recommend Unleashing the Power of Emotional Intelligence by Boyatzis and Goleman and McKee. And for people just want to have like a lighter version of it, Emotional Brilliance is a great book. And Helping People Change is for people that are in the business of coaching and or HR, by Richard Boyatzis, is a very good read also.
The assessment is, we can find it online. It's a free assessment or not, or?
There are assessments online, but the professional ones, no, you have to go through a B-level certified coach that needs to administer the test, or a trainer that has that certification to administer the emotional intelligence, which we really prefer. لأنه doing the test is not important. Debriefing the test is what is more important, is understanding how to yes.
Okay, so what I understood from you in terms of starting this journey, it always starts with the self. So you want us to look at ourselves, understand who we are, what are our weaknesses, strength, and maybe become more aware of our reactions. Is there anything you would like us to do in relation to others, Kamena, or just start with the self? And
start with the self. It's the most difficult part. Because once you start with the self, you start understanding others easily. because it is us that we don't understand ourselves. Once you really acknowledge and face yourself, and really face yourself, and that's painful, then change should happen. When change happens, then you will be at ease with others and you will be able to work with others. And let them reach out to the coaches that we have on Sira that will help them start this shift also.
Definitely. Okay, نحن we will ask our attendees, we will stop the recording. I just want to share my screen just to show our attendees how to move with us to the room. So the room is a safe space where you can ask your questions, interact with Dr. Zeina, and maybe we can go into some particular cases or struggles that you're going through. So on your mobile app or on the web, you will see on the menu in front of you, you will see an icon called Rooms. You press on it and you will see a room, leading with emotional intelligence. So we're going to move there, and we remind you that it's not recorded. It's a safe space where you can go on camera or ask your questions anonymously or just listen in, whichever is more convenient for you, so that we can share our struggles together. So thank you so much, Dr. Zeina, for this very informative session. We're going to move to the room and continue our discussion.
Okay, I'll move to the room also.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.